Today's show is sponsored by the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. They are bringing The Psychology of Serial Killers to the Byam Theater on May 2nd. If you are a fan of true crime, of mystery, it sounds like this is going to be right up your alley. The Psychology of Serial Killers is a live true crime event led by a clinical psychologist, Dr. Rachel Tolles. She's diving into the minds of some of the world's most infamous serial killers right there on stage with you. So get some answers and your tickets right now at trustarts.org. CityCast Pittsburgh is supported today by Brewhouse Arts. Y'all know that giant glowing clock tower on the south side? It's sort of behind and below that in a historic space that used to make local beer. If you have not been yet, Brewhouse Arts is really beautiful. High ceilings, so textured, and every show there sort of leaps off the walls. Their latest exhibition, I Remember It Better, could be your perfect chance to check it out. It features 7 artists in residence, all based in Pittsburgh, and it's on display Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays now through June 20th. Check out brewhousearts.org for more information about the artists and all the gallery's upcoming events. This is CityCast Pittsburgh. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about.
Impressions that I got watching the Pitt about Pittsburgh was, wow, are the accents very incredible, particularly Nurse Dana, who really highlights this on this season, where she's like, Baby Jane Doe's taking her formula well. And then my other question that was brought to light is, are the people of Pittsburgh okay? I feel like there was so much confrontation in that show, particularly in the ER. And it makes me wonder, are people from Pittsburgh really confrontational and ready to just jump into violence? I don't know. Maybe that is an unfair assumption, but that was a question I had while watching this show. So if you can answer that, that would be great.
What do you think, fam? Are we okay?
I mean, I feel like it all depends on your point of comparison. I imagine a show that was set in the emergency room in New York City would probably feel even more confrontational than the one in Pittsburgh. But we're very open with our gripes and frustrations. So maybe it's healthy to unleash them. I don't know.
Yeah, Pittsburghers are pretty good at expressing themselves on a day-to-day basis, I would say. And I'm married to a therapist, so, in my house, we're very expressive, and Yinzers certainly won't keep their opinions to themselves. And in terms of the accent, my theory has always been, if you can't do a good accent on TV or movies, just don't try. But I gotta say, Dana, Catherine Lanasa is really putting in, is doing the Lord's work. And I think the accent slipped a little this season, but it's about as good of a Yinzer accent attempt as I've seen in a long time. And she gets credit for it.
I think we might beg to differ on that point. I am with Josh Axelrod. He's with the Lindsay Theater and Cultural Center, and of course, CityCast Pittsburgh executive producer Mallory Falk. I'm not sure I agree with you on the accent point. I think that could have used a little bit more work.
It is a little distressing to me that people all over our great nation are going to think that's how a Pittsburgher sounds, are going to use Nurse Dana as their model for that.
Well, as I know you guys have talked about in the past, she gets the attitude so correct that I don't care as much about the accent, which definitely veers Philly. I don't disagree.
My backstory, invented, fully fictional for myself backstory for Dana, is that she grew up in Philly, but has lived in Pittsburgh for the past 30 years and still considers herself a transplant. And that is what that accent is.
Then the Dana canon from this season must have been rough for you when she talked about having her first kiss at Sonny's.
I know, but you could that could have been when she was 15 or 16. Although this is Pittsburgh, let's be real, that was probably age 9. We are here talking about the Pitt. The season is over. We're not going to talk about spoilers so much in the first half of this show, but we will warn you if we get into that. We asked a lot of people who have never been to Pittsburgh to send us their impressions of the city based solely on watching this show. Y'all, it was a mixed bag. So here's another.
I'm obsessed with Shen and his Dunkin' on the Pitt, specifically iced coffee Dunkin'. But when I think Dunkin', I think Boston. Is there a Pittsburgh chain that would have been better than Dunkin', or is Dunkin' exactly right for this show?
I mean, that's a really good question, actually. There are a lot of Dunkins around Pittsburgh, but it's definitely more of a Boston thing, probably commonplace. Like if you wanted to do Pittsburgh, right?
I was thinking that
Or
too. Like,
Yin's coffee.
yeah, or like La Prima, maybe. Like things that like are accessible in multiple neighborhoods, I think would have to
Yeah.
rise. But I don't know if I think Duncan is central to our civic identity.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't, maybe he's like driving in from the burbs and going through like a Dunkin' drive-through. I don't know. That could have been a nice chance to shine a light on a local Pittsburgh chain.
But then they wouldn't have gotten the brand sponsorships from Duncan sharing this clip on all of their national platforms. So I think this was probably a twofold situation. Another one, I won't play it, but it just was, wow, big sports town. Which, like, yeah, I think we can all nod. I'm literally wearing a Steelers cap. We're recording this as the draft is about to kick off any second. Another did not realize that we are on a river, which I thought was pretty funny.
Not just a river, 3 of them.
I don't know if you've heard of the confluence, but
Also, most major cities are river towns, so I thought that one was kind of funny. Our big boss here at CityCast sent one from her partner who she described as not great with geography and asked him where he thought the pit was set.
I had him guess. And Megan, he guessed Philly. I don't know. You just need to know that these people are out there. We might be thinking that this is causing this important moment for Pittsburgh, but there might be some people that just think it's called the Pit with an extra T for some reason.
I gotta say, that one was humbling for me.
that poor sweet summer child.
I think we broke Josh.
I don't know what to do with that. I mean, I definitely had friends. I went to the University of Maryland, and there were definitely people who were like, oh, I have friends in Philly. Do you happen to know them? And I had to educate them on why that doesn't make sense. This makes somehow less sense than that.
Another one of our colleagues said that she was taken aback by just like the Maha moments in the season, like talking about unvaccinated children, the pregnant person there at the end of the season, trying to have a wild birth. And this is what she wondered.
Is that the writers writing for the country, or is that reflective of the situation in Pittsburgh? Because I always think of Pittsburgh as being a deeply practical city. And I just would be surprised if that is like a normal ratio of what your hospitals are seeing in terms of, I don't know, what I guess we could call the Maha approach to medicine.
I mean, I don't work inside of Pittsburgh hospitals. I can't speak to this, but it did seem like there was this larger idea this season about combating healthcare misinformation people are finding online. The wild pregnancy was one storyline. Also, the woman who poisoned herself with turmeric, who I learned is Noah Wiley's real life wife.
That was right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So to me, that felt more like trying to be part of this national conversation than something that's hyper specific to Pittsburgh. But I don't know. I'm not inside of these hospitals here. Maybe there is a higher ratio. I don't know.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on that one, Mallory. I don't want to speak for the city on that one. It's certainly not something I am like. The idea that turmeric can cause your body to turn yellow, not something I was super familiar with, nor had I ever heard the term wild pregnancy before the finale. So yeah, the Pit honestly does a pretty good job of localizing a lot of national issues.
My partner and I were actually kind of debating because I know last season there were these storylines that were really meant to raise awareness, like about pool safety, about ensuring that kids can't access your cannabis gummies. But we were talking about like, what is the overlap of people who might be curious about a wild pregnancy and want to do a birth without any midwife, any kind of like medical support, and people who watch the Pit? Like, are there people tuning in whose minds might be changed by this? I'm really curious about the audience overlap there.
And I think you do still get some of that PSA element. Like, Mallory, to your point about the kids, like there was a whole storyline early in the season about a child who fell asleep in a car. Like, a lot of this feels a little public service announcy, but like with amazing cinematography. To speak to Pittsburgh, unvaccinated children, like that being like a thing here certainly is true. And timely, I would say too. Like the Post-Gazette and Frontline just dropped a huge investigation that exact thing, where public schools in Pennsylvania are way behind herd immunity and schools aren't enforcing it. And Pennsylvania is not enforcing it with the schools. So like a lot of people are desperately at risk right now, especially immunocompromised people and children. So like, once again, the Pit is like kind of on the nose at the exact moment the thing is relevant to the audience that it's set in. Speaking of healthcare and what's real and what's not, we'll move on to this next one.
I'm wondering if any of you have been to one of Pittsburgh's emergency rooms and how your experience there and what you saw and heard and smelled matches up with what the show depicts.
Any story time here? Has anybody been to the ER before?
I've actually been fortunate. I feel like I had more ER experiences in my 20s when I was not, that was like the period I wasn't living in Pittsburgh. So I'll let the rest of the group speak to that. I've been fortunate to not have to deal with that so much since returning home.
Yeah, I've been to the ER with other people who need the ER, not as a patient. And my memory, I don't remember where we went. I do remember I rode in the front seat of the ambulance. And I think the EMTs were much more. Frankly, this is one of the things the Pitt does that is interesting to me, is that the EMT I rode with felt way more competent than the way EMTs are often depicted on the Pitt. But the emergency room themselves, everyone seemed nice enough. They seemed like they knew what they were doing. The Pitt definitely seems like a more well-oiled machine, maybe than my recollections of it in real life. But things change.
Yeah, I like how we're all being delicate around this dance of when we may or may not have been to the ER before. I actually took this one to our colleague, newsletter writer Francesca DeBecco. She and her partner have both been to AHN specific ER a number of times for very different reasons.
I would say it's just as busy and confusing, but their hospital area on the show is way prettier than what I've experienced. I feel like I was tucked away in a corner and they kind of forgot about me. But that kind of rings true to the show too, just how people are kind of scattered about and they're always chasing around trying to attend to people.
I will say I did have an ER experience when I was a child when I broke my arm, where they actually separated me from my parents to make sure I wasn't being abused because of a comment I made. I was just I loved telling really elaborate stories as a kid. And I had to go to the ER because I stole a cupcake from my brother. And as he was chasing me, I fell and broke my arm, which says a lot about who I am as a person, I guess. But we went in and they asked what happened. And my mom said she fell. And I said, that's not what happened. And with that, someone had escorted me separately to another room to ask follow-ups. So I will say ERs here very serious about, there was a storyline this season about a suspected abuse of a child. I can say at least my experience in a Pittsburgh ER is they took that very seriously, and I ended up wasting a lot of people's very precious, important time.
Yeah. Not for nothing. Francesca also threw it out there that another storyline they had this season about their tech issues, having to go analog in the ER for so long because of a suspected cyber attack. Apparently something somewhat similar actually did happen for her partner who works there just a few weeks ago. Now, he's not in the ER. It's a different thing. But all of their charting system just went down. So they're having to deal with that. The whole you must go analog on a dime situation is a real thing that actually happens.
Is the Pitt an oracle specifically for Pittsburgh medical weirdness? Because it seems to just happen over and over again.
I mean, if that's the case, we're all really in a pickle. We'll land on a happier spot. This is our last one.
Is everyone in Pittsburgh that hot? Because if so, I'm moving.
Yes. Next question. CityCast Pittsburgh is brought to you today by Allegheny County. The county is recruiting poll workers, such an important job for the May 19th primary election. Poll workers, also called election officers, help run voting locations, and they earn money, $150 to $175 for the day, plus paid training before Election Day. Training can be in person or online, and new poll workers must complete it before working on Election Day. To serve, you must be a registered voter here in Allegheny County and be able to work the full day on May 19th. Poll workers play an important role in ensuring a smooth, fair election, and they gain valuable experience interacting with voters and managing the election process. If you're interested in earning a little extra money and supporting your community, apply online at AlleghenyVotes.com. Learn more and submit your application at AlleghenyVotes.com today. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Pittsburgh Opera. A lot of us think of opera as really dramatic stories focused on tragic love, and they can totally be like that. But opera can also be ridiculous and fun, and that is exactly what to expect from their next show. The Pittsburgh Opera is presenting Verdi's Falstaff. If you have not seen it, Falstaff is considered one of the best-known comedic operas of all time. The music really matches the mischief. It's based on The Merry Wives of Windsor by William Shakespeare, and you're going to follow Sir John Falstaff's attempts to woo 3 women with identical love letters. Honestly, I think Falstaff would have loved online dating. The show runs April 28th to May 3rd, and each performance has English subtitles projected above the stage. So you're always going to know what's going on, though I have been to their shows like this. The performers do such a great job of depicting the action. If you look away, you're still going to know what's up. Tickets start at $20, and kids and teens are always half price. Plus, the Pittsburgh Opera offers discounts for students, seniors, military service members, and more. Learn more at pittsburghopera.org/citycast. Pittsburgh Opera, where can we take you? All right, that's what outsiders, people who do not live here, think of us just from watching the Pitt. How did y'all feel as insiders, as Pittsburghers, watching the Pitt this season? What did you think? And spoilers are okay here. So if you haven't finished the season, like now may be your time.
I mean, the last time we talked about this show, we did an episode at the midway point, and I was really harping on the fact that there had yet to be a furry appearance. And we finally got one that finally lent this the 4th of July Pittsburgh legitimacy that it needed.
I don't know how they found that actor. If you had like grown a furry in a lab who you would cast as a furry, it would have been that woman. I mean, by the way, I do need to say that I've interviewed furries and I know how hard they work on ventilating their fursuits. So honestly, that's a pretty shoddy furry. If she's getting heat stroke from her furry.
The ones that ventilate or have like air conditioning systems built into them, they cost thousands of dollars. Like I don't begrudge anyone for having a fursuit that's not that fancy.
I know how hard they try. I feel like she could have tried harder.
No, I feel like that's so elitist, Josh.
I'm not saying get air conditioning for your fursuit. I'm just saying like there's got to be a way to ventilate it better.
Some of them do. I did appreciate like when they get into like the anthrocon of it all, like there's like a sassy retort about like, yeah, me and my 18,000 best friends or something. I also thought it was funny. I forget which physician they were talking to, but they said something like, I think you'd make a good dragon.
That was probably Santos. That had to have been Santos.
Maybe it was. Yeah. It made me think about like fursonas, like what the fursona would be of each doctor. I didn't put this deep thought into that, but it made me laugh.
That should be a session at this year's Anthrocon.
Definitely.
Honestly. I feel like episode 9, that's where that one was like rich with Pittsburgh, like sightings, notations, things like that. Like that's the one where I think it was Dana, it might have been Monica, said something about a gum band, and that was like a whole thing. There was Jenny's ice cream mentioned. They also talked about what I think was supposed to be CCAC, the community college, but they call it something different. And of course, that's the beginning of the sandcastle plot, which I thought was going to be bigger.
Did that dad ever find his missing son? Like there were a lot of storylines that I felt like there are a lot of questions that didn't get answered, which does feel realistic. Like, I think if you are working in an emergency room, some people might just go to another floor and you never know what became of them. But that was a real loose end for me that didn't get tied up.
I just want to say that my wife was apoplectic when the Jenny's reference was dropped because we're a Millie's family and everything else is so hyper specific to Pittsburgh. And she was like, this national chain? What?
It is a national chain, but it's at least based in, isn't it Columbus? So it's close. It's like Midwestern, but it's not us.
That I don't know if that almost makes it worse. An Ohio-based company getting a shout out on the show.
But also, I did really enjoy that. I kind of enjoyed that the water park accident. Obviously, they couldn't have said Sandcastle's name out loud.
They did not say Sandcastle, but like I literally screamed at the TV quietly because my kid was asleep. Not Sandcastle!
Exactly. But I kind of enjoyed that there really wasn't an overarching awful thing this season. It was just kind of a series of awful things that it seemed that was kind of just meant to break all the doctors down and really make them evaluate their commitment to what they're doing and if they want to pivot in any way career-wise. And yeah, that water park accident, like, yeah, I guess we'll just never know if that dad and his kid got reunited, and that poor woman who had to see her leg on a different table we'll never know how she's doing psychologically or physically. But hey, at least we got a little resolution to the neck fash patient in the finale. You know, Langdon went upstairs and actually checked on a patient. It was nice to see a doctor caring that much, you know.
Yeah. And I did hear, behind the scenes, folks involved with the show saying after the Pitt Fest storyline last season, they knew that like if they just tried to top that every season, they could only fail. They didn't say this, but that's how you end up with like the scene in Grey's Anatomy where a doctor is like shocking a deer back to life. So I appreciate that they're like not going to try to just have more and more outlandish emergencies every season. This season felt less intense to me. But also last season, I binged like in one sitting. Like I had the experience as if I was with them for an entire shift. And so I don't know how much viewing week to week influenced the experience versus the fact that there just wasn't a major overarching storyline.
Yeah, I think it felt less like it didn't create the same level of anxiety, Mallory, but I have the same question about like whether that was a product of watching by appointment instead of binging. But I also feel like this season felt darker. Like even with a mass shooting incident covering a lot of season 1, this one felt like we were watching every character, with few exceptions, slip into like their rock bottom, which hurt more somehow. Like Josh and I talked about this a lot over the last several weeks. We were just like, I said, I don't think I like this as much. Like even though the actual settings and storyline last year was worse, this is harder to watch for me.
I fully understand that point, and this is me putting my critic's brain on.
He literally physically pushes up the glasses for this.
I swear I didn't mean to do that in real time. But I think last season, I think the real success of it was that it really wasn't about the doctors. Like, obviously you got to know them and like them, but it was really about just the relentless assaults of that particular day in the ER. And this season, I think, was really heavy on character development and less so. And then obviously the ER still, like, it was a tough day, but it was less about what was happening externally and way more internal, which I feel like is harder to do and probably what a lot of people were bumping on. Like, Robbie was acting really erratically and people were canceling him online, basically, because their saintly Dr. Michael Rabinovich was suddenly a more human character with flaws and had no ability to even talk to Dr. Mohan in a normal way anymore. So I don't know. I would say I like season 1 just a hair better. And I think season 2 was a little slower, a little more contemplative with its characters. But also I think the fact that I left the season just being like, I kind of understand these characters more and I understand where most of them ended up and it all made sense to me. I was like, it was just an entirely different thing they tried. And I think it largely worked, which is pretty incredible.
I think season 1 kind of showed the effects of society on healthcare workers. And this season dug a lot more into like some really dark themes about the effect on patients, like the storyline of someone who earned too much to qualify for medical assistance, the storyline of a kid struggling to breathe because they couldn't access the medication for their asthma. There were just like a lot of storylines. The patient who like the hospital where he lived had closed and his son had to like speed him into the city to get treatment. That also just felt very, very heavy because you were seeing just what happens to people all the time because we live in a country that does not provide universal health care.
Yeah, I mean, I think full stop, the entire show is like a PSA for universal health care. Like that's the whole show.
Yes, but I felt it more. I felt it even more strongly this season than in season 1.
And I like that it's a PSA for that doesn't always feel overtly political. Like, it's honestly, The Pitt is not a subtle show. Like, when it says something, the characters will turn to camera and they'll be like, this number of patients, blah, blah, blah. Like, they'll throw out the statistics. And I appreciate the unsubtlety because, a lot of people need that.
I mean, it's not like watching The Office. They're not like staring at the camera like, and then this, or rolling their eyes directly down the screen. Like,
it also has to be said, though, this season had an ICE storyline, and not to get too into the weeds on that, but even that it felt like it had something to say, but it didn't feel like it was going over the top, politicizing ICE's effect on an ER. Like, I felt like everything that happened made sense within the realm of the show. And again, this the show has to do this thing where it has to balance being hyper realistic with being a TV show. And again, largely, I think it succeeds. And there are certainly some times where I'm like, yes, I feel like I'm watching an after school special. But, then
But
you
it's
get
prettier.
a furry. So
Yeah.
it's, yes.
And those ice references were like real Pittsburgh references. They talked about DHS South Side location. They mentioned going out to a detention center in Clearfield, which is where Meshannon Valley, the biggest detention center in the Northeast, is located here in our state. So they had done their, like with so much else on the show with the Pittsburgh references, they really had done their research for this storyline.
I do have a couple smaller bones to pick. I agree. Like with that, so great, no notes, but like there were some of them that made me laugh, or like my partner and I like sitting on the couch and just like, no, that was a good try. Like, for example, like the Fort Pitt Museum reenactors, one of them stabbing the other one with a bayonet, which was genuinely funny. But Langdon pops out with something about Fort Pitt and 1776, and they're trying to position him as if he knows history. That's not when Fort Pitt was relevant. Like, it was way before the Revolution, dude. You were so close. You were so close.
Sort of like how they had a whole entire conversation about the sticks and did not mention Renegade. What was that?
That's
egregious.
rage bait. That's what that is. They knew what they were doing. They made a choice so that all of us would talk about it on the internet.
That's such hyper-specific rage bait to just go after like your most dedicated local audience members.
But I don't think it's just local. Steelers Nation, man. Like, I think that's them like tapping into that because so many people are aware of what Renegade is.
I do just wanted to vaguely defend the Fort Pitt thing only because it brought the moment where Mel was talking about that sounds like something that could be fun. I'd love to be a part of. And so there was a character.
I loved it.
There was a character beat involved in it. And I can forgive clunky Pittsburgh references if at least there's a character beat that like makes sense involved in it.
Oh, no, I love the moment. They just could have gotten the year right. It was so close.
There was also a moment that I was so ready to pick apart, but then it all got explained, which was the patient who came in who had been eating at Pamela's and choked on broccoli. And at first I thought, like, who is ordering a dish with broccoli at Pamela's? Same. But then he explained that his wife was trying to get him to eat healthier. So he must have had some kind of like veggie omelet. I don't know. It still rings a little false, but they did explain it away.
They do. I have ordered their like broccoli cheddar omelet. Like that is a real thing, but like it's not large pieces of broccoli. Not that you need a large obstruction to cause a choking incident.
To me, the biggest missed opportunity of the whole season, and I know we've already given spoilers, but like if you haven't seen this, tune out now because I feel like if you don't see this coming, it's so much fun. But the very final scene of the season when Santos and Mel go to a karaoke bar, they built that set, and I feel like this show is so Pittsburgh, but there aren't opportunities really to film on locations other than like the exterior of AHN. And it really bums me out that they didn't film that in a real Pittsburgh karaoke bar.
Yeah, I agree with you. Although I did like the shot of the parking garage and the fireworks, not because they're accurate, because that's definitely a Steelers parking garage, not AHN. It's too close. And also, our fireworks do not go off from 4 different places across our city skyline. I wish they did, but I still think it made us look nice. And so I'm willing to take the creative liberty there.
I have no notes on any of that. I just want to also shout out Whitaker not knowing who Roberto Clemente was, which again is a character moment, and it doesn't necessarily ring false for our lovely Huckleberry farm boy, but also even if you have the slightest knowledge of baseball, like Roberto Clemente is one of those names. Maybe it's because I grew up here. I don't know, but I feel like it's just one of those names where it's like, okay, I know that's a baseball player.
I checked with my partner who is not from here, and Roberto Clemente was on his radar.
I don't think I would have known if I'd never lived here, but this guy has theoretically lived here for a year plus.
I mean, if nothing else, has he not like passed the Clemente Museum and that giant mural?
Or gone across the Roberto Clemente Bridge, which Robbie, went across the season on a motorcycle without a helmet and passed an ambulance, which is also insane on a single lane Pittsburgh bridge. But anyway, yeah, like, again, character made perfect sense. Even that guy who's lived in Pittsburgh for more than 5 minutes should have heard the name Roberto Clemente before that day.
Can I tell y'all my favorite learning from the entire season?
Please.
By all means.
So in episode 12, Monica, like so grizzled, mentions that she
I know what you're gonna
stripped
say.
herself through school at Purgatory. And like the idea being like, y'all don't even know how it was. You've got it so easy. I didn't know that is a real place. That was a strip club in Pittsburgh in the 1980s, or at least so says Reddit. Like, because I was like, surely somebody has gotten to the bottom of this. But I found posts going back like 2 and 4 years talking about this place. So like it does exist in the Pittsburgh lexicon. Apparently it was on Liberty Avenue.
This is what I don't fully understand, that you can have that like deep cut, hyper specific reference. And then you can also say there's an art gallery where there's actually just a Wendy's.
Exactly.
Again, rage bait. I think it's got to be rage bait. Well, before we go, in honor of the NFL draft, and because it was your idea, Josh, and I liked it, we are going to end with a little lightning round contest of sorts. So who do we think was the most valuable player for the Pitt in season 2? Actually, it could be a cast member, it could be a character, it could be a line, it could be set, it could be prop. What do you think?
I mean, for me, it's Sean Hannity as Dr. Jack Abbott with a bullet. The second that man came on screen, I believe in episode 7, like working as a combat medic, having
Which is
just
a real
been
thing.
shot, which is a real thing. As the kids would say, the Riz was out of control. Like that man was just did a charisma offensive for every second of screen time he had. And then he might have had the best acting job of the whole season in the finale when he gave Robbie that speech about, life. So, Dr. Jack Abbott, my MVP of the Pitt season 2.
My MVP moment has to be when Javadi just gave her cutting assessment of every single main character on the show, other than she did spare Whitaker. But she just had everyone pegged so well and explaining like why she didn't think she could stay in this environment because no one is healthy.
Great choice.
Yeah. I am going with just the nurses, particularly the background ones, like how they background dress, but some of them are real characters. Like Jesse, that actor, is a real nurse. There's an older fella, and I can't remember if they ever gave him a character name, but he is in the background of a million shots and actually gets a line at the very end with Baby Jane Doe. He's a real nurse and like help them mock things up. And like, for example, Baby Jane Doe, really 3 babies, and they dress their moms up as nurses, and they got to be in background shots too.
Okay, this was actually the most unbelievable part about the show, where they were like, it's time for Baby Jane Doe to have her next feeding. When it's time for a baby to eat, they are not going to like peacefully conk out on somebody's shoulders. Of everything that happened that season, I found that the most unrealistic.
Okay, best and worst doctoring, if indeed you think there are any.
Oh, for me, it was Dr. Langdon's cervical dislocation reduction that he apparently
that
had a chance to...
chiropractic move thing? Yeah.
Where he had a chance to paralyze that guy, but I believe Robbie's exact words were "Doctor the F up," and Langdon came through. So, I mean, there's some great doctoring all season. That one sticks out to me.
I think the worst is Santos, like complete inability to function without technology. Like, yes, a translator should be there, and there should be software. There's lots of should be's, but like her stomping out and acting like a small child every time her toy didn't work was ridiculous. That's horrible doctoring.
That and everything Ogilvy did this season. Those were my worst doctoring moments.
The worst, I guess, this wasn't a treatment of a patient, but I just think we've already touched on this. Robbie's treatment of Dr. Mohan all season.
Yes.
That was rough. But also
was
felt,
bad
I mean, I
bossing,
did really
for sure.
appreciate, I know the like rabid Pitt fans don't like that our perfect saint, Dr. Robbie, was an a-hole this season, but it felt so realistic, just like this buildup of untreated PTSD leading to this kind of behavior. So hard to watch, but I appreciated it.
Hard to agree.
Okay, and last one, best or worst patients?
I mean, best, hands down, R.I.P. Louis.
I was gonna say my Louis is the easy answer, but other than Louis, I would say Roxy.
Calling me out, Josh.
No, I'm agreeing with you. No, it's the right answer. It's the right answer. But I also want to give a shout out to Roxy, who was the cancer patient who had to deal with end of life care, and also her husband, by the way, played by a Mayor of Kingstown actor who I recognize. But yeah, that storyline really got me just in the feels. So.
Oh, I cried literally every single time they started a single scene with them. I think the worst patient for me personally was the girl who tried to use super glue to do her eyelashes, which was Dr. Langdon's real life girlfriend.
I did not realize that, but eye trauma makes me think of actually the best patient was the nun who had, what was it, chlamydia in her eye and was so chill about it.
My worst patient award goes to the guy who put Nurse Emma in a headlock and then proceeded to throw the pamphlets at McKay, and McKay had to do everything in her power to not read that guy the riot act.
Yeah, golf
Oh,
douche.
yeah. Maybe some of the worst doctoring was also like socking that guy. Like, perfectly human act, but maybe not the best doctoring or nursing in the show.
Yeah, he was literally attacking a nurse. What are you going to do?
It did feel kind of correct to how Pittsburghers would defend each other, but not particularly legal. Last thing, anything you saw in the show that wasn't real, but you wish was? Mine was the fireworks, like no question.
I mean, I guess that karaoke tiki bar, like build that for us here.
Oh, I love that.
So just have karaoke at the Tiki Lounge. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Hidden Harbor. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Give Hidden Harbor a karaoke machine. I wish it was just more socially acceptable at every job to do it. My other MVP of the season, Joy Kwan, did, and clock out the second your shift is over. I love healthy work-life representation.
Yeah. Well, and how exceptional they made that be. Here's to more work-life balance for the doctors in season 3, which is coming. We already know that's on the way.
Yes, and here's to our jobs continuing to be watching the Pit.
It's a tough life.
I know. And thank you for letting me annoy you all in the submission to talk about it with you on CityCast.
Shut up, Josh. You're the best. That is all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. You can support us by becoming a CityCast Pittsburgh neighbor. All the details are at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow with more from around the city. We'll talk to you soon.
I guess I have to say, Baby Jane Doe. Seems like you've got a great city, and I can't wait to visit.